You can't do it. Most of these engineers and scientists and inventors think they're going to do it the way they do a new software program. And they're going to try to monetize it through intellectual property protections and patent. You cannot do that with this because the system is so completely weaponized and corrupt. And I'm talking from the patent office on. That the only way to do it is to do an open source release of it massively through the internet blockchain. So that's what we're doing. But the technology, if you look at this documentary, you'll see this trajectory. There's a great photograph with Nikola Tesla with this engineer farmer, self-taught guy. I believe it was 1908 or 1902, the caption. And this guy had like an earth battery. He had some metallic stakes and wires in the ground. He was pulling resonant energy. He was running his farm.
Wow.
Even my father, I wasn't alive. He was born in 1916. This was before my dad, who was hand-to-hand combat in World War II with the Japanese amphibious landing unit. But I'm going, what the heck? We have our planet. Half the planet's population doesn't have indoor plumbing. 3 billion people have no way to cook their food. They're cutting down the rainforest. 3 billion. The biosphere, even if you don't think climate change is real, 5 million people die from breathing particulate matter, soot, all over the world from this noxious stuff we keep burning. Yeah. So we need to take care of our creation, the earth, and our future. And it isn't going to happen with a windmill and a solar panel. Believe me, no way you're going to run 8 billion people off of those technologies. We're going to have innovative, high-tech solutions to the energy and environmental and poverty problems.
I mean, look, I just want to backtrack on that real quick. When you're talking about people dying from inhaling these particles and these chemicals and shit, I mean, this unfortunately is a touchy subject, the pollution and climate change and all this shit. But what I can attest to that is 100% fact is what you just said, because I've been to these parts of the world.
Yeah.
I've spent over a decade in these parts of the world, and you see all these veterans coming home dying of weird cancers from shit that they breathed in overseas.
Yep.
And I can tell you, in the wintertime in Afghanistan, the soot is so thick in the air that if you go outside we're talking just 5 minutes, and you go back inside and spit in the sink or spit in whatever,
blow your nose,
you're going to spit gray.
Right.
But
those fine particles get into your lungs and then your circulatory and heart and cause a huge number of problems, not just cancers, but I'm talking heart, lung disease. So why are we doing that when these technologies have existed? Now, this same corrupt organization, because it doesn't just deal with one issue, have been responsible for basically hoovering up, vacuuming up all these technologies for 100 years. I know people personally who have been murdered because they had one. And it's because they, very against my advice, AMA, against medical advice, against their own security interests, they wanted to keep it secret. And they thought they were going to be so clever and they were going to outfox this big super state of thugs. I'm going, dude, you have no idea what you're up against here. And then they think they're going to do encryption and keep it secret. I'm going, oh my God. You think this group needs to worry about an electromagnetic encryption when they can target a volume of space anywhere and extract anything being said? I mean, it's, and it's, I understand it, because if you're in the normal engineering world, you're not going to know this. It's hard to believe it. But I said, if you don't believe it, just wait. You're going to be dead or it'll be confiscated. And you're lucky if all they do is come in and kick your door in, hit you with a national security order and drag it off. That's your best outcome. That's your best case scenario if you do it the conventional way. So I go, look, it's like, what is that saying attributed to Einstein? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. The reason I can prove that the strategy most people use doesn't work is that we can prove these technologies have been around for over 100 years, and you and I are still tied into a coal-fired or gas-fired power grid, right? So if the strategies, if the conventional business and technology strategies were going to work, they would have worked before you and I were born. So we need to think. We need to have different thinking about this strategically. So what we're saying is, all of these technologies, if they're used for peaceful purposes, would really give us a whole new civilization. Beautiful. Now, the downside is, given what humans are, we like to take any new technological breakthrough and weaponize it. But the truth is, they've already done that. We've already weaponized these things.
How do you think that the anti-gravity technology that's using gravity as a power source, how is that happening? Do you have a brief explanation on?
I really think it's gravity control and gravity wave control. As for a power source, I think the power source was better described as this quantum vacuum energy or zero-point energy. But it's like two separate things but are related. So you can have a zero-point energy system or a free energy system. It doesn't move and it's not affecting gravity, but at a certain resonant frequency and power, and has to do with vortices, toroidal energy patterns, you can then cause what I call mass cancellation, where an object literally takes on weightlessness. Now, if you go back in the documentary, we touch on this, all the way back to T. Townsend Brown and what was later called the B-Phil-Brown effect. In the late 1920s, he took a very high voltage system at a very certain, with wires around a crystalline material, and it levitated, just floated. Now, that was almost 100 years ago, late 20s. That was then the Kautsky-Frost experiment in Germany, around the same time, confirmed it. Later, the whole B-Phil-Brown effect, studying very high voltage VHV systems, began to be increasingly studied and classified in the 30s and 40s. By the time World War II ended, Adolf Hitler had a disc-shaped electrogravitic, but it wasn't stable, which is why he could never use it in the war. But it was brought back to America by Paul Mellon and General Patton, and Allen Dulles. So that device actually became a very important object to study at the end of World War II. And of course, that technology got advanced greatly by studying the extraterrestrial materials that we also were beginning to acquire by using electromagnetic weapons to down the ET craft. So you had two rivers of technology being developed from the 20s, 30s, 40s that intersected with the extraterrestrial technologies, and they hybridized them.
Shit.
So that's what happened between 1945 and 55, that decade.
How many different ways do you think how many different ways are there to harness this kind of energy?
Oh, I think there are dozens.
How did Tesla do it?
Tesla, I think, was actually capturing resonant magnetic field energy of the Earth that's almost boundless. So there are a lot of, quote, free energy approaches. I think the ones that use these very high voltage systems that create a sort of a vector, a tap, as it were, into this quantum vacuum energy and zero-point energy field, those began to be stumbled across, but sort of episodically as a phenomenon back in the late 1800s, because that was the heyday when they were first discovering electromagnetism. And I think Maxwell and Faraday, some of these guys stumbled across this, but they didn't know what it was. You were getting more energy out than you had to put in. So I think you can have a rotational coil-based device. Floyd Sweet, who we feature in the movie, had a solid-state device that was about this big that could run a 300 horsepower electric engine for your car. No other batteries, the little teeny...
you had video of that.
Yep, we have video of it. It was tested by a Lieutenant Colonel, Tom Bearden, who's a very dear friend of mine, just passed away. He handed off all of what he knew about this to us. We have a file that was a CIA operative named Sajaki that I knew, but he had a guy I know named John Bedini, who was allowed to copy a bunch of confiscated patents, and we have that disc. So we need to send up a research lab to do this and get to the bottom of it, I think, Shawn, very quickly, because we need to do it.